Welcome to this edition of Great Books, a lively discussion of a selection from the canon of exceptional literature. Here's your host, Jack Hatfield.
Welcome to the Great Books Show. I hope you enjoy it. Maureen, do you want to tell us about it?
Gabriel García Márquez was born in Colombia in 1927. Today we are discussing Márquez's earliest novella, LeafStorm, which is set in the small town of Macondo in the years after the 1899 War of a Thousand Days and during the rise and fall of the temporary economic boom created by the banana companies. It shares a location and several characters with his later masterpiece, 100 Years of Solitude. The plot of LeafStorm follows the passage of one day in September 1928 as a colonel, his daughter Isabel, and his 11-year-old grandson attempt to bury the body of a suicide. This nameless doctor who hung himself had lived in their house for 8 years after arriving in Macondo as a stranger 25 years before. After competition from the banana company clinic took his patients away, the doctor refused to treat any more people, even when the town begged him to help wounded locals during a political revolt. Flashbacks and interior monologues by the three family members tell the story of the arrival of the doctor, his affair with the colonel's maid, Meme, who disappears while living with him, and the doctor's years of self-imposed isolation. A subplot includes the colonel's hand in the marriage of his daughter Isabel to another outsider, Martin, who left her and their son 9 years previously.
Oh, thanks, Maureen. I thought the first question might be about the title. And one thing about Márquez is so much fun to read, but I'm just going to read a few sentences. This is how the story starts off. Suddenly, as if a whirlwind had set down in the center of the town, the banana company arrived, pursued by the leaf storm. A whirling leaf storm had been stirred up, formed out of the human and material dregs of other towns, the chaff of a civil war that seemed ever more remote and unlikely. The whirlwind was implacable. What does he really mean by the leaf storm? Why pick that as the title?
I thought he meant the people coming into town. And then there's a part where I thought he meant the town itself. In fact, I think on page 3 of my book, he says something about the human leaf storm coming in. That's what he calls it. So I think it's the people part of it, and the other part I think is the town. Excuse me.
What about the town?
Well, my gosh, the town is just is there anything right with that town in this story? The odor of the town, the decay, the rubbish. My God, it sounds like there was a war in the town. That's what, to answer your question about the town.
Yeah, but they talk about the culmination of the leaf storm as happening on that day that there was a revolt in the town, and after that, everything fell apart, right? After the revolt and the people were killed, and the townspeople asked the doctor to help the people who were hurt. And it talks about the leaf storm again in that context as, the leaf storm leaving, because that was right as the banana company was leaving town, and there was political turmoil over the economic distress caused.
Did the people get hurt as a result of the war?
There was a political revolt having to do with the elections in the town, and somebody had put out a whole lot of alcohol for the military men and for the policemen. And I think it got them drunk, and they went up against the revolutionaries and just started shooting. And there were various people who were hurt.
When the doctor refused to help people, take care of them, I thought they were veterans of war. That he was. I didn't think it was townspeople.
No,
that's different.
They were injured.
Pardon me? They were injured. Okay.
And laying on his doorstep.
And he wouldn't do any pro bono. It was.
Yeah, but he had already quit practicing at that time.
Yes, yeah, he had, but he was still a doctor. He was the best in town.
Yeah. No, he wasn't the best in town, because what had happened is that the coming in with the banana company was a whole bunch of doctors. But they were overwhelmed. by all that.
Overwhelmed with
Yes,
their
so-
work, yeah. Right.
So, well, anyway, on LeafStorm, of all the changes, I mean, this town went through, first of all, it was a sleepy little town. The banana company came in and they were dancing in the streets, and it grew, and quite a few changes. Then they left, there was quite a few changes. And same way with the characters. I mean, tremendous change, at least the doctor. Do you think LeafStorm just was implying this change, this kind of unfortunate change that happened?
I have a couple of quotes. One is the banana company had left Macondo, and with them went the LeafStorm, the last traces of what prosperous Macondo had been in 1915. And then it talks about 10 years ago during that revolution. And it says, all that was needed was to go out into the fields laid waste by the banana company, clean out the weeds, and start again from scratch. But they trained the LeafStorm to be impatient, not to believe in either past or future. We only needed a short time to realize that the LeafStorm had left, and that without it, reconstruction was impossible. The LeafStorm had brought everything, and it had taken everything away. And one of the things I think it brought was the doctor, right? He was one of the immigrants to Macondo during that time.
And the priest. Both came in
they
the same-
yes, that was so interesting.
Yeah,
They arrived at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a mysterious thing because one of the characters said both the priest and the doctor looked the same, and kind of implied
Yes,
there was some sort of connection.
Right.
But there was left. No,
I died there.
Yeah,
Right.
nothing
Yeah.
else was said.
Many questions unanswered.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting that the priest, he was Pup, right?
Yeah, Pup,
He was returning to Macondo because he had
Right.
gone off to fight in the war. I imagine the War of 1899. And he came back, and he was later called a saint by the colonel, who thought he was a saint, even though supposedly he had children and he was preaching out of a almanac instead of the Gospels.
He didn't use the Bible.
But he called him a saint. And at the same time, the colonel's wife is calling the doctor the devil, and saying things about how everything he touches is cursed, and bringing that Antichrist picture into it. And I thought it was funny that, the priest comes in at one end of town the same day that the doctor comes in the other end of the town. And while I certainly don't agree that he was evil, it appears that this woman thought he was evil. And I thought that was a nice
Then
juxtaposition
she
there.
shut up his bedroom forevermore.
Because everything in it was cursed.
And
She
the
didn't want to
priest-
let evil
The
out.
priest was a colonel too.
He was in the war. He had
was
been in
in
the
the
war.
and he was a colonel at an early age. Because I don't know how old the priest was, but they said he was a colonel. And I wondered if people got rank as a result of their station, but he couldn't be a priest at 17. I don't know. Yeah.
Let's talk about the doctor. I mean, all the changes he went through. He came to town, and do we ever know why he came to town?
No.
No.
Well,
Had
the colonel was there.
But
Did
he
he
didn't know
have?
the
Yeah.
And did he have anything else?
Did he have anywhere else to go?
That was the only connection.
But I don't think
That
they
we
ever
know
gave
that
us a
he had.
reason
No.
of why he was there. He had a letter of recommendation from the colonel, from an officer that the colonel fought with
right.
During the war, and that was his entry into the society of the town. And they make reference to that often. I forget the colonel's name, but they both worked under him.
Why did the doctor give up medicine?
There's a question.
Why
Why
did
did
he
the
give
doctor
up?
give up medicine?
Yeah.
Okay, well, one of the things it said was a banana company came in and set up a clinic, and his patients started going to the clinic
Yeah.
instead of to him. And on a day after no patient showed up all day, he shut the door and never opened it again and refused to practice medicine. However, it also says that shortly after that, the banana company doctors tried to get every doctor in town to show their diplomas,
Certificates.
certificates.
Yeah.
And he refused.
Refused.
So the question is,
He did- was he a doctor?
really a doctor?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's it. Right. Yeah.
And then when the banana company left, the doctors left. So he was left there, and why didn't he take up being a doctor again? And he was several. Mimi was one that was supposedly sick, and I've forgotten who else. And they were begging him to doctor him, and he refused.
Oh, I thought he was just pouting. I mean, but, you know, forever.
Yeah.
Not like a woman's pout. This was a man in the hammock for the rest of his life,
Yeah.
pouting.
But if you remember that quote I read about the LeafStorm, after it left, there was like no point. I mean, this was him after the LeafStorm had left, and he just fell apart, didn't do anything productive for the rest of his life. So maybe that was part of, you know, the town falling apart and his life falling apart, all because the LeafStorm of prosperity had left. But he didn't help the maid because he knew what was wrong with her.
Right.
Mimi?
Yeah,
Was it me?
he knew
Maybe?
she was pregnant,
Yeah.
but nobody else did. The colonel's wife never found out that she was pregnant,
yeah.
right? And the daughter didn't know that she was pregnant. So we're finding all this out through flashbacks from people who don't know the story, and we only find out the real story is as the pages keep turning.
And we don't know the real story for a lot of things.
And we still don't know if it was his
No.
child or not.
Yeah.
A lot of unanswered
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was going out at night.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
says that because
Yeah.
he kept saying, "I took precautions."
Right.
You
Right.
know? And the only way something like this happens is if something you don't know about or think about happens. So he was accusing her of
Yeah.
Fooling
going
around.
out on the
That's
town.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he was active doctor for a time.
Yes.
Then he didn't have any patients left, so he shut himself up. But then there was a period where he went back. He was shining his shoes, went back to the barber shop?
Yes, he was looking for a wife.
That wasn't clear.
Oh, yeah, because he was, well, the suspicion that he was because the barber had an available daughter.
But no one had
But-
ever seen
right,
him talking to
or
one
never
another.
saw her, you know, out
right,
in
yeah.
his presence.
Yeah, but everyone in town knew that the barber's daughter would always be an old maid after going through a year of suffering, as she was pursued by a spirit,
Oh, yeah.
an invisible lover who spread dirt on her food and muddied the water in the pitcher and fogged the mirrors in the barber shop and beat her until her face was green and disfigured. And it was really funny because it said that the people were waiting for a whole year for the monstrous event of her giving birth because of this
Yeah, this
invisible
the
lover
invisible
who didn't
ghost.
exist. And I thought that was one of those examples of his strangeness putting some unreality in with daily life and people believing it.
But
you
he
know.
could pull himself up by his bootstraps, get dressed up, and go do whatever he was going to do. We just assumed he was looking for a wife.
I don't assume that.
Well,
think he was
I
looking
don't
for a wife.
assume that. I didn't
We,
assume that
okay.
either.
Bob's saying, we. You.
Did he ever, the only relationship that doctor had, as I remember, was with Mimi.
Yes.
And if you look at the father was, I guess, revered in town because he was a colonel and a good guy, I guess. The daughter, I think, talked about a relationship. The father fixes his daughter up with whatever the guy's name was.
Martin.
Okay. The son, the young boy, had Abraham and his friends. Okay. Who did the doctor have a relationship with in the story beside Mimi?
The colonel.
Good, the colonel.
They consider each other
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
and for a while, the barber shop.
The people in the barber shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
He'd go sit there all day.
Yeah.
But then after the barber shop, one day he just said, no more,
No
and then
more.
go back and locked himself up for the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but the barbershop I thought was interesting because the colonel said it was almost like he was being an adolescent with that time where he cared about what he looked like. And,
Yeah.
and you know, he went out. And then again, during that time, after the railroad, this is right after the railroad came in, And he referred to the leaf storm right then when he went out to the barbershop again. And he said, all of this will pass when we get used to the leaf storm. And I think he was talking about the magnificent prospects of the town passing, which seemed depressing. Like you
Yeah,
can't
right.
even enjoy the prosperity because you think it's going to pass.
I was surprised the way the doctor died.
Yeah.
Because, well, I thought he was a strong person and didn't care about what people said. He refused to help people. Now, you know, in Macondo, the word's going to get around, right? So, and he didn't care. So
I thought he was just waiting to die, and it was just taking too long.
what gave you that impression during the story?
Because he was doing absolutely nothing except laying in that hammock.
But that doesn't mean he's waiting to die.
Well, he was
I didn't
getting,
see him as-
they kept saying about how he was getting thinner
Yeah.
and smaller, and he was sitting there fading away. Well, I assumed that he was not a young man to begin when he and the colonel, when
Right.
this all began.
Right.
And if the girl's 20, well, the war.
29, I think she
Yeah,
was.
but was the war over before that?
Yes, the war was over a long time
Okay,
before.
so then we've got, well, they could have only been in their 50s.
So,
Yeah, so they were not like old men getting ready to die. That's what I'm saying.
I
They
don't-
could have
I
had,
didn't get
they
that
could have had a
impression.
lot of vigor, but
however, the colonel had lost his vigor. 3 years previously, he had gotten ill,
Yeah.
and they thought he was going to die.
Yes.
And the second priest, Father Angel, what a name for a priest,
Yeah,
Father
Father
Angel, Father Angel came,
Right.
you know. And the doctors came, couldn't do anything for him, and the colonel had last rites, and everyone thought he was going to die. And then the doctor showed up, you know, and cured him. It doesn't say how he cured him, but somehow he cured him. And then the colonel said, well, thank you. And the doctor said, you don't have to thank me. After all, a dead man can't bury me. And so if he saw the colonel getting sicker and sicker, he wanted somebody alive who would bury him.
so if they're talking about that, it sounds like to me that they were
Getting
in their
older.
dotage, maybe, or not.
You know, one of the unanswered questions that I had was when the policeman was investigating the colonel, asking the colonel questions
About the hanging of the
about the
doctor.
hanging and the rope and
Yeah.
the noose and all of that. And then all of a sudden, the colonel comes up with, well, I have a question. No, the policeman says, I have one more question. And before the policeman asks the question, the colonel says, how much?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay? And
He was asking for a bribe.
now,
Sure.
yeah, did the colonel end up paying off?
Oh, yeah.
It looked like that.
Well, I
think
It
so.
was
I-
implied.
I thought so.
But you don't know for sure.
No, you don't know
Right.
much
You know,
about the
Yeah, but the
story.
that
documentation came really fast after
Yeah,
that.
how much?
Yeah, but I kept wondering when he was going to say how much. Because
Oh, were you? Oh, I never picked that up.
I didn't.
I am so
But
innocent.
that's how business is done in South America.
Oh,
Yeah, but
yeah.
there was also an implication that the mayor was dragging his feet on allowing the burial because he was siding with the townspeople who all hated the doctor. And I love the part about, and they wanted to smell the sweet odor of his decomposition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, because the doctor hadn't helped the rebels who were townspeople, right? He shut his door and didn't come out and do his doctoring of them, right? And they put like a curse on him that they didn't want him buried, and that the mayor here was siding with them. Even Father Angel didn't want him buried in consecrated
No,
ground
well, he's,
because
well,
he didn't
Yeah,
believe
but
in God.
for money,
or
Also
they
the
could find a
suicide.
little spot
suicide.
for him over at the end of the
oh yeah,
corner.
that's right.
I have on the doctor, this really jumped out. I go, what? One of the first things he said was, they'd ask him, can we get you food? And he said, yeah, grass.
Right.
I want grass like a donkey.
Yeah, right.
And you go,
Right.
what?
And after his wife, the colonel's wife, prepares this fantastic dinner, he asked for grass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I never got the grass part.
No, I
But
didn't
that-
either.
Yeah.
But he made an enemy of her that day.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
Okay.
My mother would have done the same thing.
But what I thought was unusual was repeatedly throughout the story, the doctor was referred to in terms of being an animal, as a mule. He said, ordinary grass, ma'am, the kinds that donkeys eat. I thought of him as a strange animal that stayed seated at the table. You know, he was looked on with curiosity like a gloomy animal. He was still there, shut up like an animal that ate grass, a ruminant like any ox in a yoke. And I wondered if that was like referring back to nature, because the theme of the leaf storm and other weather keeps occurring in the story, and that's part of nature, and maybe they're saying something about the doctor in nature.
I took it a little different. I just thought they were making a real strong case that he was mentally ill. I mean, the doctor was very strange throughout the whole story. I mean, he did some very strange things. And so I thought that kind of started it from day one. I want grass to eat.
One of the thoughts I had, if someone asked me, what's that story about? I'm not sure I know how to answer the question.
Yeah.
Well, though, if you've had a town that's a boom with, say, oil just discovered, and all of the dregs of society come in right away, because it takes a while for the legitimate business to get started. But the girls of the evening and all the other stuff, the gambling,
Right.
the bars, all of this stuff comes in right away, as in here.
That's the leaf storm.
Well, it's coming, and then comes in the banana company, the oil company, whatever.
Right.
And then eventually, when everything is drained, and I don't know what happened with the banana company, if there were no more bananas, don't they grow forever? But then when they leave, everything gathers up and moves on to another town.
And the town has been changed.
What was the point of?
Yeah.
Oh, the point just being that it's the story of a town that was existing, and that what happened to it when this boom came in with the banana company, and how it blew in, and then how it blew out.
I just think that's a minor storyline. The main is the characters, and the main characters is the doctor.
Well, the leaf storm also affected the doctor, because if the banana company hadn't come in with the clinic, he might have stayed
Could be, yeah.
a productive citizen working as a doctor for the rest of his life, right? And if it hadn't left, then the town wouldn't have been so run down.
Yeah, because it wouldn't go back to what it was, even though it was, rather on the slender side.
Yes.
It still wouldn't.
It was
go
changed,
back.
and it wouldn't.
Or the people didn't
have
want to
that.
go and till the fields, and bring it back to whatever it was. And of course, the characters are, what fills in the story. But if somebody's going to ask you, what it's about, you've got the nucleus of this town, coming in and out. But then, of course, the characters, then this guy, Mr. Marquez, picks it up and, fleshes this thing out beautifully.
Speaking of the characters, in the first pages, I don't know how many, but I was confused at who was speaking.
Oh, I was through the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah. I had to go back several times to find out, was it the father speaking? Was it the young boy or his mother? Yeah. I finally caught on, but it took me a while.
But I found that very interesting, because it was like it made me pay more attention to that first paragraph.
Absolutely.
Because is the boy still talking?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is it the girl, or is it him? So, you didn't drift off and just kind of flow into it.
Yeah.
You're paying attention more, and I love that.
I thought it made the story more fascinating because each person knew only part of the truth. And so the daughter didn't, she even said there were secrets I didn't know, and she still doesn't know at the end of the story. And then she repeats the conversation of her mother, who didn't know the whole story, and and what Meme said, who didn't know the whole story.
And the son.
And the son was oblivious to almost everything.
Yeah.
He was talking about death. This was his first
He didn't want to be there.
experience with
We're
death.
kind of at the end, and one of the things, again, is what is this about? And the way I took it was the richness of language and just kind of, there wasn't that kind of, some stories you read and it's a metaphor for X and all this sort of thing. Here it was almost like an excuse for some very rich language and
Oh, I
some of
like
these-
Kate's explanation of what it's about. With your example of the oil, it might have been an oil town, and how people come in and don't pay attention to institutions. They're just interested in oil and not creating institutions for their society. I thought that was a good.
Yeah, and
good
how little shops close up when the big shop comes
Sure.
in, but then when there isn't no more the banana company, then that big box store is going to close.
Right.
Then, the people who could have.
Maureen was going to say
And
something.
how events change people, and they can't stand up to the events. The events are just like a natural force that blows them here and there. It blew the town here and there, it blew the people in the town here and there.
That's what the colonel actually said. I feel like this force is driving everything.
Yes.
So
Who I thought was a very interesting character was this Martin. And what did it have to do with his double-breasted jacket being buttoned up all the time? But I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
But then again,
He mentioned that more than once.
yeah, that was.
But then again, Isabel's life, was blown apart by this force
And
that her
she
husband sort of
her
talked her
father,
into.
Isabel-
Yeah, her father
Her
sort
father
of
was
got her to
dominant, and
marry
Isabel
Martin.
wasn't a very independent person.
Right? It was a leaf storm.
in our last minute, what was your general impression of it? Did you enjoy reading it?
It's the first time I read this author, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to tell you, I had to work at it to enjoy it.
I did too, and I will read everything else that he's written.
Yeah, I just some of this stuff. I wish we had time to read it out because it.
And I definitely want to reread 100 Years of Solitude. I'm looking forward to that.
But the richness of these scenes and the
Yeah.
description of the town and of the people, it's just wonderful. So, well, thank you all. And so,
That was a fast half hour.
yeah, it was. It was.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very hard to do. A lot of times we can end up with a "this is about" sort of stage,
Yeah.
and you go here.
Not this one.
We
me ask you-
didn't even get into the God part.
that was-
There was
yeah.
a lot of God.